Welcome back to the final chapter of Digimon. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it's over. The theme of Digimon has been Jack doing way more work than he wants to, playing 3 versions of Digimon World, 4 versions of Digimon Rumble Arena, and now we're on to 2 versions of Digimon Story. Prison reform hasn't really hit Digimon yet. And now it's time for the Digimon recap. How was Digimon doing since we last left it? After the end of Data Squad, we've entered the era that fans refer to as the Don't Talk to Me era. Hey man, how's Digimon going? I don't know, how's your dead dog? Leave me alone! Digimon in the mid to late 2000s and into the 2010s was not in a good place. Hard to say it was even in a place since they just stopped making it one day. The creature capture fatigue was setting in the longer the new millennium rolled on. There were less Dinosaur King knockoffs, and even that wasn't at its peak anymore. You can already tell that Digimon was getting weird by the 3-year gap between Frontier and Data Squad, when previously there had been a new series every year. This would extend further to another 3-year gap between Data Squad and its follow-up Cross Wars, a series that introduced fusing Digimon, which is not DNA Digivolution. They made a point to point that out. These gaps can be explained as Digimon entering rocky water. The ratings for every show had been lower than the previous one, with Frontier still doing well, but noticeably worse than the previous ones. It came off the ending of Tamers way too soon, with one week being the ending of Tamers, and the next week being the start of Frontier. And Tamers already struggled to keep its audience. It was such a poor earner that it killed Bandai's Anime Festival when it was the headliner with Crash Gear and Kinnikuman Nisei. I didn't even have to fish for that one! The ratings would flip-flop with Data Squad before trending upwards towards the end, but it was still the weakest earning franchise at Bandai that was considered a tentpole. So they put it on ice for another 4 years until Cross Wars. Cross Wars was another show of declines. It started out decently popular and well-liked, but dipped further and faster than any other series. With its 3rd season, the first time a Digimon series got one, ratings hit an all-time low and it was back in the cooler for Agumon and friends. And what if I told you that it was even worse stateside? Digimon Fusion was the localized version of Cross Wars and premiered in 2013. A year after Cross Wars wrapped up. It was on some channel, either the CW or Nicktoons depending, and it felt like they just had an obligation to make it. Yeah, Disney kicked Saban to the curb by this point, so no Disney XD airtime for you, little dude! The series didn't catch on in America, and was cancelled with a whole extra season unlocalized. Bandai's attempt to pump life into the Digimon franchise started in 2016 with the new Digimon series. And they couldn't even make it that far. What this was the launch of a new series in the Digimon universe called Appmon, which sounds like a great idea. In the time between Cross Wars and now, smartphones went from a luxury to a necessity, and now everybody had a Digivice in their hands. Just release an app that emulated raising a Digimon and you'd be good. Except Appmon came at the Digimon franchise with a very hostile outlook. Appmon wasn't seen as a way to make modern Digimon, it was seen as a way to replace Digimon, with a phrase popping up a lot in promotion of the series, de-Digimoning the franchise. Internal production staff who had been working on Digimon for years to that point were just kinda sick of the setting and ideas. They wanted to revamp it without being tied to Digivices or the digital world. It's natural for a series that's gone on for over 10 years at this point to want to freshen things up, but this was way too hostile a takeover. The series was called Digimon, but wouldn't have any Digimon in it. Appmon were kinda close design-wise, but even in their attempts to push the franchise to be something else, they still fell into using nostalgia to gain interest. That's the whole reason the first word in the title of Appmon isn't Appmon, or why Digimon will still show up to hopefully bring back in lapsed fans to a show that didn't want to be Digimon. The show did about as well as any other creature capture toy ad show, but its merch was a flop and its video game a bomb. Old and new fans didn't take to this new interpretation of what Digimon could be. As for America, you could ask an American Digimon fan about Appmon, and there's a chance they might not even know what you're talking about. We never got a scrap of Appmon in the States, and instead just got Digimon All-Star Rumble in the meantime, to check and see if we even still cared about Digimon. You know, most of the time when they hold a franchise hostage behind an obligation purchase, they at least put out a good game. There was a lone bright spot during all of this. A game released in 2015, right before the Appmon experiment. Bandai's olive branch to show that Digimon wasn't going away, it was just taking a back seat. It was an RPG for the PlayStation Vita that followed the Story series of games, a sub-series based on Digimon World 3. It would sell well, but more importantly, gave an idea of what Digimon could be. The people who grew up on Digimon did just that. Grew up. There was nothing stopping then Digimon growing up with them, telling a more mature story with higher stakes and a focus on story. This is what jaded fans were looking for, and the game found an audience locally and abroad. American Digimon fans were kicked up into a frenzy that the Digimon game of their dreams was just out there, just out of reach, and launched campaigns to get the game localized. The petitions that were started garnered so much attention that Bandai couldn't ignore it, and the game was ported to America a year later, with a PS4 port on the same day. The game would get a sequel in 2017 that a year later would release internationally, garnering even more love from fans and eventually pushing the game over 3 million copies sold. This increased confidence in the strength of the Digimon brand eventually led us to the localized releases of games like Next Order, official dubs of the Tri-Movie series that got back the original cast, and a dub of the new remake of the original Adventure series. This one game is responsible for ushering in a new era of Digimon that has ultimately painted the series in a new light, that has elevated it above spec tropes for so many people. A series that grew up with its players. This is Digimon's story, Cyber Sleuth. And this is its cooler younger brother. I know I'm about to get my ass blasted for this, but I played through almost all of Cyber Sleuth, so I'm allowed to say this. I didn't enjoy Cyber Sleuth. It started hopeful, and I really tried through the whole thing, but around chapter 15, I turned the game off and had zero interest in turning it back on. I liked the story and characters, I think everybody agrees about that on Cyber Sleuth, but the actual gameplay I found boring and super frustrating. Fights are way too basic. You use your Digimon's special skill, and that's pretty much it. Anything else you want to do, like inflict status conditions or lower stats, unless it's acceleration specifically, totally unnecessary. They feel so small and ineffective that the turn you burn using one is always better spent doing a damaging attack to actually end the fight. You can play pretend that the poison effect is really gonna be what clinches it, or you could just hit them. The game is extremely easy. I never struggled once when playing the game on normal, so I cranked it up to hard, which fixed random encounters, but made bosses damage sponges that don't test skill but attention spans. The gameplay does not have the depth to warrant the amount of hoops you have to jump through to get Digivolutions. You're working through a swamp of systems that the game barely explains and expects you to intuit with little to no explanation. It's a game that's extremely lucky to be a Digimon game, because Digimon raising is all I cared about. But even then, this is the least personal Digimon game I've ever played. You're not raising your partners and friends with friendship and love. These are soldiers sent to die on the battlefield. You can't interact with them, you can't play with them, you just feed them on the island, and that's about the only time you're allowed to pretend these are pets. The environments for the game are super cool at first, with these extremely slick UIs and menus, and a lot of inspiration taken from our war game with the stark whites, random computer elements, and red outlines. After a while, though, the game tanks, with the same repeated blue digital theme for a majority of its dungeons. And speaking of that, the game's dungeon design is total dog shit. They use the same circle-on-the-ground layout for a lot of the game, and it wasn't fun the first time. Don't know why they thought the fourth time would be the clincher. If I had to sum up the game in a word, it would be pneumomono ultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis, because it's the longest word in the English language. This game takes forever to do anything. Digivolutions require hours of extremely dull grinding multiple times a Digimon for every Digimon, only offset by an equally annoying to get exploit with the Platinum Numemons, Sukamons, and Tactician USBs, because I knew about that! Before people assume I played the game with a bag over my head, I paid attention, I did the research, I did everything I could to try to enjoy the game, and it still stunk! The story-to-gameplay ratio is absolutely horrible, with long stretches of talking punctuated by a gameplay section with no fighting in it. The game is one sick puppy, where it'll let you walk forward a bit, cutscene. Walk forward a bit, cutscene. Walk forward a bit, cutscene. The game's story structure is a series of rakes on the ground. Breaking up story progression with mandatory side quests just made me dread the 2 hours it would take to clear everything the game wanted before we got to advance the plot, which goes from extremely unfocused to super high stakes in one chapter. I liked Cyber Sleuth exactly enough to say I didn't hate it, but not a point more. And based on the good word, it seems the worst dungeons in the game come after I quit, so maybe that's why I don't hate it. The game was sold to me for years as the best Digimon had to offer. And who knows? Maybe Hacker's Memory is a transcendent experience that'll fix every problem I had with the game. I doubt it. I thought Cyber Sleuth was massively overrated, and it threw this whole idea into peril. This was the crescendo! I spent a whole month saying Dragon Quest monsters so I could get to Cyber Sleuth, and I thought it wasn't very good. But then I remembered. This game got a sequel that was released last year in Digimon Story Time Stranger. It was $70 though, and I learned my lesson about paying above $60 for a Bandai Namco game. They're not getting me again! Then the Ultimate Edition went on sale for $60 and there was a demo. Fine! If the demo is that much better than Cyber Sleuth, I'll play it! Damn it! Time Stranger wastes zero time throwing you into the thick of the action. As an agent of the super-secret organization Adamas, so secret we have a promotional anime advertising our existence, we get thrown into the middle of a full-on Digimon invasion, with massive monsters destroying large parts of the city. There's no need to introduce what Adamas is in depth, or how we got here, or what your mission is. The game gives you just enough to go off of that we can get into the action and create intrigue for later. You meet up with a girl who seems to know who you are and where you need to be going, but you've never met her before. She gets blasted into smithereens, or I guess teched the laser, and you get caught in a clash between this massive mech and an unseen fist. You end up getting flung 8 years back into the past before the Shinjuku Inferno, as it's called, and have to find a way to prevent it now that you have the chance. Along with you is Inori, the girl who we met, who now doesn't seem to know who we are, and Agiomon, a special Digimon hatched from an egg guarded by Minervamon, a member of the Olympus 12. This is a high order of Digimon comparable to the Royal Knights, with a wide variety of different designs. You got Marukimon, Neptunemon, Plutomon. I don't actually like most of their designs, I'm sorry. Look at Marsmon! He looks like an idiot! In order to fix the world and prevent the Inferno, you have to go and visit each of the Olympus 12 to stop the Titans, an evil Digimon faction bent on taking over the world. The general setup is simple, but the game has more hits than misses. Off the top of my head, the only major problem I have with the start of the story is the lack of depth for the Titans. You don't really get the sense that they're a unified front, that there's a chain of command. They're mostly just bad Digimon grouped by a name. I think each of the Olympus 12 gets good characterization, and there are some great stories to be found in each chapter. I don't think any single story in the game, though, is as strong as what you find in the Abyss area with Shellmon and Divermon. Divermon is a member of the Titans who have been attacking the area, and during a raid, he gets injured and left for dead. Shellmon risks becoming an outcast to try and save him despite being an enemy. The two form a close bond that has Divermon turning on the Titans to join Shellmon and save the village. But it isn't enough. The Titans still conquer the village and everybody is forced to flee. Shellmon's kindness ultimately backfires and everybody gets hurt because of it. With everybody, Shellmon included, abandoning the village, Divermon is left alone in the town he tried to conquer, and resolves to try to fix things himself. There are some other good stories. I like Bacchusmon the Drunk and his struggle to balance his responsibilities with his sanity, which especially becomes more appropriate as the story goes on. Volcanusmon likes Gunpla, that's neat. But the story gets more interesting at the halfway point, which I think I'll save for later. It's as early as 15 minutes into the game that we get our first fight, and the improvements over Cyber Sleuth are shoved in your face. Your options are the same as across all the story-style games, with an attack, skills, guard, and team swap option all immediately at your disposal. New to the game, though, are options like Analyze. This allows you to get a detailed look at a Digimon's stat spread, as well as the things that make up this game's type matchups. Digimon come in 3 different attributes: Vaccine, Data, and Virus. Like the weapon wheel in Fire Emblem, each one beats another. Vaccines cure the viruses, viruses corrupt the data, and the data datatizes the vaccines. Okay, that one doesn't make sense. You can also see that each Digimon has elemental weaknesses, which might seem straight out of Monster Racers, but it works a little bit differently. Time Stranger does away with each Digimon having a dedicated element, and instead gives them a set of 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses. So they may take reduced damage from wind and metal attacks, but take double damage from water and ice attacks. The elements are instead solely tied to your moves. Use a move on a Digimon with a type disadvantage, it'll deal double damage. Use the attribute that beats theirs too, and you'll be dealing triple damage. Each Digimon will also have a special signature skill that comes with a unique condition. It'll heal on hit, or inflict a status condition or debuff, but a lot of them interact with a new system, traits. Traits are the characteristics of your Digimon that are the most obvious, like Monodramon here being a small dragon. So War Greymon's Great Tornado would deal additional damage because it has the dragon trait. I like the system, but it's let down by the fact that Digimon is Digimon. Do you have any idea how many categories they have for these guys? Think Devimon is a demon-type Digimon? No, that's a Dark Angel-type Digimon. So a move that does extra damage to demons wouldn't do any extra damage. There's a category for vegetation, and then carnivorous vegetation. Vegemon is carnivorous, but red Vegemon is not. There's an entire category for Stegosaurus Digimon. Okay, so there must be a lot of Stegosaurus Digimon to warrant a category. There's one. The mechanic itself is also really clumsy in specific cases that affected me, so they matter. Diaboromon's Catastrophe Cannon is a dark move that deals extra damage to Digimon with the Unknown attribute, a special attribute that doesn't have any strengths or weaknesses against anything. The only Digimon in the game with the Unknown attribute are Apocalypmon, the shittiest versions of Agumon and Gabumon, and the Diaboromon line, a line who naturally resists dark moves, making the damage buff useless, since you get the advantage of hitting an unknown attribute, but then the disadvantage of the dark resistance. I kept Diaboromon around because I wanted to see if launching nukes was a nature or nurture impulse, but if I didn't like it, I would have cut it a long time ago. Combat improvements over Cyber Sleuth include attack being worth using, swapping party members and using items being free actions, elemental weaknesses shoring up attribute resistances, the auto battle for getting through menial fights that stays on between fights, increasing battle speed, encounters being visible in the overworld, and the option to attack Digimon early to knock out a bit of their health. If you're vastly more powerful than the encounter though, where one shot would win the fight will never start. You'll just get the experience and the money and move on. The results screen is now also free-floating. You can end a fight in the middle of the victory screen, and instead, the results will just pop up after the fight. So many little things have been done to make the combat feel so much better than it did in Cyber Sleuth. I was able to enjoy so much more about the game now that the bulk of the gameplay was enjoyable, fast, and consistently challenging. However, there is a big exception to all that: boss fights. The game does a lot of good stuff in regards to battles, but man, these guys can't make a boss fight to save their lives. From the very first proper boss fight with Kuwagamon, you're gonna be hit in the head with a few hard truths. You cannot beat bosses without the attribute advantage. I had a team coming in of 2 free type in trainings and Demi-Devimon, because I wasn't gonna not pick Demi-Devimon as my starter. This was a bloodbath only hidden by the fact that Kuwagamon is red. I came back to the fight after a lot of grinding, overcaution on my part, not the game's fault, with 2 vaccines and a virus, so at least he wouldn't have the advantage over any of them. The fight went much easier, but I did wonder just how the game expected me to do prior to fighting the boss. You usually don't get a heads up on what fight is coming next, which makes planning really hard. You don't know what attribute to load up on, you don't know what types are gonna be good or which ones won't work at all. It's really frustrating to not know how you should plan. Even if you do know what the next boss is gonna be, like when you fight Parrotmon. What's Parrotmon? You'd guess wind because it's a bird, but no, it's actually primarily lightning. So the lightning you might think would work doesn't. Then there's trying to figure out what its attribute is, which, unless you know Parrotmon is a vaccine, will be a complete surprise. You can bring 6 Digimon with you at a time, so at worst you're going to have 2 strong attributes and a neutral, but then you have to factor in the elemental weaknesses and it gets tough again. Parrotmon is immune to electric attacks, but the Waspmon outside the fight are weak to it. Wouldn't it make more sense if the fights before the boss informed the weaknesses of the boss, so you knew what to bring? This folds into a bigger problem across the game that without a standardized type chart or unifying design, the Digimon are really hard to plan for. It's not Robopon where you enter a water town and know to use grass. The type matchups aren't informed by the designs of the Digimon. What attack type do you think worked best in the Abyss area? Electric, right? Because water conducts electricity? Nope. In fact, most water Digimon resist electricity. I don't mean to keep bringing up Cyber Sleuth, but a similar thing happened. There's a guy in the game, Jimmykin. Really don't want to dwell on him. His first fight has him using 2 Meramon and a Devimon. And for fight number 2, it's 2 Blue Meramon. Those are both teams with only virus types. So with ample lead up to the third fight, I showed up with a team of exclusively vaccines to counter. Only for him to bust out a team of 2 Skullmeramons and a Boltmon, already unbelievably low blow. But that's 3 data types, the type that beats vaccine! The game taught me to expect viruses and pulled the rug out from under me with no way of knowing what I was up against. And this happens pretty often in Time Stranger too. There's also a rules are for thee but not for me approach to status conditions. Bosses have a blanket immunity to status conditions. There are exceptions, but for the big bosses, they can't be stunned, put to sleep, poisoned, or pixelized, which... super cute status condition, can't even lie. The boss, meanwhile, is allowed to use all the status conditions they want, and they will! Certain boss strategies revolve around status conditions. Like with the Dianamon fight, she is sleep crazy. You get entire rounds skipped with mass sleep effects that leave you open while she charges a move. The guest Digimon for the fight are supposed to wake you up, but by the time they do, they don't do it quick enough, and you take unavoidable damage. You could equip the items that make you immune to sleep beforehand, but again, how do you know what's coming before entering the fight? The effects of poison or sleep or stun are meant to help out with long, dragged-out fights, and yet the longest, most dragged-out fights in the game turn them off. I actually read back when I was trying to figure out what I hated about Cyber Sleuth that you should treat your first run at a boss like a recon mission where you learn what Digimon to bring and what items to equip, which is a stupid way to tackle a boss! There should be mechanisms in the game to help you learn how to beat a boss that don't require a game over to access. Not having that sort of knowledge be available from solely in-game resources, and instead require scouting out the fight, dying, and then coming back is terrible boss design. I like the early fights as these wars of attrition where you whittle down their health bit by bit before going all out when the boss is vulnerable, but by the end, it just becomes a damage check, where you mash the move you have equipped that deals the most damage. Boy, it's a good thing the endgame isn't 8 boss fights in a row. The part of the game I ended up loving the most, though, is exactly what it should have been: raising Digimon. The game features over 400 of them, including Cyber Sleuth's massive roster of Royal Knights and Demon Lords, and now the Olympus 12, along with a whole host of new Digimon and the lines that come with them. Since the story games play like traditional RPGs rather than the pet sims of the world games, you're able to have a whole party of Digimon instead of just one. And they no longer have the raising mechanics like needing food or dying after a set time. The complexities begin when it comes to acquiring and raising your Digimon. During battles, you can scan the Digimon you fight. The rates are lower the higher the level, so an in-training 1 takes 1 scan to get to 100%, while a Mega takes 20. You can also double it to a 200% scan to get some bonuses. Once they're in the party, you can digivolve them up the evolution chain depending on the stat requirements. So a Koromon can become Agumon, Gilamon, Dracomon, or Shoutmon. Just fill the requirements and you're there. Not every Digimon digivolves with the same stat spread though, so Gilamon will have different requirements from Dracomon, and if you want to get one instead of the other, you have to focus on that stat. Grinding for specific stats has been made a dream compared to Cyber Sleuth thanks to personalities. These are your natures out of Chinpokomon, and depending on which one you have, your Digimon will get a boost on level up to that stat. So, with a sassy Digimon, you'd get more attack and speed on a level up, but a gassy one will gain more magic and HP. The immediate worry is having to continuously trash Digimon until you make one with the right personality for the stat spread you want, but don't rev up that meat grinder just yet. They're modular. You can change their personality through either training or talking. You can give them advice or reassure them to influence their personality, which is such a great way to make these feel like your Digimon. You get some pride out of having sit-down chats with them, and it makes them feel more like living creatures and your partners. 2 things, though, that will gate you out of getting your Megas before the first dungeon are Agent Ranks and Blue Stats. Agent Ranks are a resource that you get whenever you clear a mission. You use them to fill out a grid that adds flat buffs to the 4 personalities and your cross arts. These are flashy free actions that can deal a lot of damage fast or buff your party in a fight. It does take a while to charge it up though, but you can carry it across fights, so if you know a boss is coming up, you can charge up a cross art. Champions, Ultimates, and Megas are locked behind a high enough agent rank, which accomplishes capping your progress while also encouraging you to do the side content. By doing the various side quests you get across the game, you get access to stronger, cooler-looking Digimon faster, so why not do one? I just wish that... I don't know. The side quests were mandatory and you couldn't progress in the main story until you completed every single side quest that you get after completing a main story chapter. Oh, Drunk Examon is crashing into Sega's Akihabara building, where they sell real dolls of real people without their consent? In the game? Well, I'd love to help with that. But the Occult Club thinks they saw a ghost. This cap on your progress makes the moments where you get to upgrade your whole team and see their new forms, test their new moves, and see what they can do to the bad guys euphoric. The staggered ability to get Digimon plus the more personal attachment was a great way to go. But what about those blue stats I mentioned? Well, getting certain Digimon through certain routes is really hard. Tyrannomon, for instance, needs a whopping 800 attack, a really high amount for a champion. I trained my Dracomon to the bone, but he was up into the 30s and no closer to reaching Tyrannomon. That's when I decided to try backtracking. Bust out those diapers, we're going back to preschool. Not only are you able to digivolve in the game, but de-digivolve. go back to an earlier stage and try for a different route. But if you're already committed to one Digimon, what's the point in it? Well, that's where blue stats come in. When you Digivolve or de-Digivolve, you'll gain a permanent stat boost based on the level your Digimon was when they shifted. These are blue stats, and you gain them every time you Digivolve or de-Digivolve. The friendship percentage is a bit of a misleading stat, since it isn't really a percentage, but rather a cap of how many times you can de-Digivolve and re-Digivolve while still gaining stats. So a 20% friendship Digimon can de-Digivolve and re-Digivolve 20 times and still gain blue stats. The bond stat above it increases your level cap, and the higher your level, the more blue stats you get when Digivolving. This is adapted from the ABI stat in Cyber Sleuth, which was dog shit. It would increase on Digivolution either way, but wouldn't immediately raise stats. Instead, it raised the amount of stats you could gain from training on the island, which is where you store excess Digimon to train on their own. I hate this place because it takes 30 real minutes to do any training there, and only in Time Stranger did they add a way to speed it up at a price. ABI was really an IOU, as 200 ABI meant you could add on extra stats in the farm at the price of several real hours, giving you no immediate impact. The blue stats in Time Stranger immediately give you the credit you deserve for going through the Digivolution Shuffle, and that instant impact makes it well worth going through. Once you figure out what you're doing, getting through lines becomes a snap, and you get to train up a variety of viable Digimon to tackle the game with. Especially if you know another secret to leveling. I said don't turn on the meat grinder, I never said put it away. Just because you don't intend on using a Digimon doesn't mean you shouldn't use the scans. You can load unused Digimon into the ones you want to train to give them an XP boost, usually a few levels instantly, with better results the higher the generation. I was able to make a fierce fighting team in the 3rd dungeon by scanning champions, loading them into my main Digimon, and watching their levels soar. It takes a while, but compared to getting Platinum Numemons and Tactician USBs, this is somehow easier. I got so attached, I'd like to give a little rundown of my all-star team and how they factored into the run. First off was my original partner Digimon, Devimon. Now, because Cyber Sleuth had a tamer who used Diaboromon, I couldn't use it in that game, so I had to wait until now to use one. I de-Digivolved Devimon back down to in training, rode the Caramon train, and got him all the way up to Diaboromon, who was fine. Raw attack and speed is good, but the lack of attribute advantages hindered using that damage to the fullest. His time as Infamon was probably when he was at his most useful, with Spider Shooter being a multi-hit move, and with a status-inflicting item equipped, he became a good stunner in battle. After him, we got the first 2 real all-stars. First was Bearmon, the most Digimon of them all. Got a shit ton of belts on his hands, a hat with a bear on it, in case you don't know what he is, and with that, plenty of charisma. The game was the introduction to his long-missing ultimate form in Great Grizzlymon, and I was excited to use it. But the only choices for Mega after that were a virus type or a magic user. He was my main vaccine powerhouse and put in work for the whole game no matter the enemy, so I wasn't gonna shortchange him. I digivolved him all the way back down to get to Leomon before working back up to his true form, Bancho Leomon. He's obtained true power. Being a delinquent. He's watching George Lopez on Nick at Night and drinking a soda past 8 p.m. He's off the fucking chain! While I was worried for his survivability, being a Leomon and all, his strength was only growing, and he became the main character of the party. His counterpart was my main virus damage dealer, Tyrannomon. Of course I picked Tyrannomon. Is there a more contrarian pick? Yes, and he's coming later. I had to work hard to get his attack stat high enough, but man was it worth it. Anything that needed to be hit was hit by Tyrannomon, and he hit it well. His eventual adoption of lightning attacks, by my ranking the best attacking type in the game, made him even better. And his final form was routinely hacking through boss health like they were rookies. That evolution, though. Come on, Tyrannomon! Who needs Metal Greymon when we got Metal Now what went wrong here? Okay, well, always next time, show him your megaform, Tyrannomon! This reflects poorly on me as a tamer, doesn't it? Acting as support was the man, the queen, the motherfucking god of this shit, Marine Angemon! Now, if you read rankings for the megas in Cyber Sleuth and Time Stranger, you'll notice a weird glitch in them all that puts Marine Angemon as just a top 5 best mega in the game. Her ability to heal the entire party based on her humongous special defense stat means that as long as she's alive, you can't lose the game. This is her purpose, and without it, I would have lost a lot more. Griffinmon was picked back in Cyber Sleuth because I had to make sure I stood out. Terriermon as a starter? Basic pick.
This fat son of a bitch!
Unimon? Okay. Hippogriffomon? Oh, now we're talking. Griffinmon? Ooh, that sounds like a downgrade. They were useful as a data-type magic user, but Griffinmon might not have been the mega I should have gone for, since its ultimate move is keyed off its physical damage, which just wasn't very good. Still worth it for the damage on magic moves, but I wish that they had made the right choice when doling out special moves. Finally was Eaglemon. A late bloomer, but what a great addition! This all started because saying Polywana Cracker when I used Parrotmon was fun, but dear god, this thing is an honorary mega! Immunity to lightning attacks, a stupid strong lightning signature move, huge magic stat with bulk to back it up, Parrotmon alone made the run so much easier. The decision to turn it into Eaglemon only made it stronger, and by the end, it was like I had been using it the entire time. As for the supporting players who saw less usage, there was Tuskmon, the most obscure of the dinosaur champions compared to Tyranno and Greymon, but as a data-type physical attacker, he was nobody to mess with. His upgrade into Triceramon, and finally Ultimate Brachiomon, made him useful for the whole time I had him. Plus, he's the bad ending choice for partner Digimon in Survive, so I had to throw him a bone.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just thinking about getting it cut off at this point.
No, Spirit, don't show me these images anymore! I'll change!
What the fuck was that?
Pile Volcanomon I grabbed because he was fantastic in Cyber Sleuth, but, he kinda sucked here. Losing out on his multi-target special attack as Volcanomon made him a lot worse for a long time, and once he was Pile Volcanomon, his role as Bruiser was taken over by Ultimate Brachiomon. Oh, and move diversity in this game sucks. There are 4 moves in this game. Single-hit physical, single-hit special, multi-hit physical, and multi-hit special, with the option to either hit one or multiple enemies. Moves have less effects than they did in Cyber Sleuth. Like, off the top of my head, the Oriumon line had a move that ignored defense, meaning they could deal big physical damage. Here, no move like that exists. I also think that abilities were handled worse here than in Cyber Sleuth. With them being tied to personalities and being modular, it means any Digimon can have any ability. Along with how easy it is to apply any stat boost you want to any Digimon, it kinda makes them feel not special. Like any Digimon could fill any role, whereas the abilities in the previous game made sure you knew which Digimon were good for which options. Wisemon was the first Digimon I raised with my knowledge of how blue stats worked, and he became unstoppable. As a magic virus user, he hit data types, other viruses, and even unprepared vaccines with hit after hit, especially with the special personality skill that keyed his normal attacks off of his magic stat. I was mainly using him though for his mega. It was one of the great demon lords, which in Japan was just named D. That way, when you added on the mon suffix, his name became Demon. Next to Monmon, the best use of the mon suffix. Despite saying hell multiple times in the game, they couldn't get away with calling him Demon, and instead renamed him to Creepymon. Ooh, he's so creepy. Being a mixed attacker kinda killed his usefulness, but I wasn't gonna pass up the chance to use him, especially cause getting him in Cyber Sleuth was hell on earth. And finally, Gundramon. I never really intended to use Gundramon, but I wanted him because he was my favorite Digimon. He's a dragon made of guns. Why is he not the mascot of the franchise? You do technically have one more party member though, Digimon. Since he follows you for practically your entire journey, he'll be a part of your party for as long as any of your other Digimon. He starts out as a useful party member, being a champion when the rest of your team is rookies, but you quickly learn he's held back by his inability to gain blue stats. You can't level him up and down over and over again to raise his blue stats, so while the rest of my team had stats in the 3,000 at minimum towards the end game, Digimon couldn't even scratch 2,000. He'd get knocked down first in battle, barely do any damage even with 4 times effective moves. I know you can power him up through some item grinding in New Game Plus, but that doesn't really help me now, does it? Before we talk about the rest of the meat of the story, just gotta say, game is absolutely gorgeous. Environments are lush, they feel lived in with Digimon all over the place. They fit their themes and work perfectly. Every biome is distinct, has the mashed together charm of Digimon, and I can't think of a bad one in the whole game. Music as well, just like with Cyber Sleuth, aces. Every location has a distinct theme, and the ability to set certain songs for battles and even the overworld meant that if I loved a track, I got to hear it all the time. Now as for what I was talking about with a more interesting second half of the game establishes a very simple goal. Stop the Titans from conquering the digital and human world with Digimon, who's not just any Digimon, but the reincarnation of the great hero Chronomon. Everywhere we go, we beat the Titans, but it's only small victories. They drive away every Digimon in the Abyss area. They infect the World Tree. They siege the Holy Land. We beat bosses, but don't get any victories. Even though we beat them at every turn, the Titans still manage to invade the human world, and we have to face off with their leader Titamon, hopped up on Chronomon juice. And we beat him, and the Shinjuku Inferno still happens. The world is destroyed, and we failed. Digimon, though, as the reincarnation of Chronomon, is able to turn back time enough that we get a second chance. Only, we end up time traveling back to present day. 8 years in the future from where we were. Digimon have been leaking into the real world for years at this point, and have necessitated the creation of their own colonies within major cities, as well as a task force to deal with them. The reason they're trying to escape to the real world is because the Titans totally took over the digital world. All of the Olympus 12 are in sorry states, and if we want any hope of fixing this, we have to go out and help them again. Marukimon is dying from poison after the battle where we lost Central City. Bacchusmon got so drunk to cope with his job that he passed out during a raid that got all of his friends killed, and plans on drinking poisoned wine to kill himself. The worst of it, though, is back in the Abyss area. There's a conflict between the Titans, led by Neptunemon, and the remaining villagers, led by Venusmon. Venusmon has us send wine as a peace offering, which Neptunemon is really enthusiastic to take. That's because this is actually the Divermon we saved 8 years ago. He kept the Titans from doing more damage by becoming their leader in the area, and is eager to broker peace. It's only when we tell this to Venusmon, the same Shellmon that saved Divermon all the way back then, that she breaks down. She poisoned the wine, yeah, there are 3 poisonings in 3 plotlines, it's not very creative, as a way to kill Neptunemon. But finding out that he was Divermon leaves her overrun with guilt. The second half of the game even starts to integrate side quest characters into the main quest. Early on, you do a side quest for the twin Bearmon bros, a big brother and little brother who cause trouble and act like bullies. During the time skip, the brothers go their separate ways, one becoming the vicious Colosseum Titan Callusmon, while the other becomes the underground champ Grappleomon. Grapple evolves into the Olympus 12 member Marsmon, and goes to take down his big brother before he can cause any more damage. Each one of the plotlines following the time skip is handled great. They're emotional and impactful, taking these side characters from earlier in the game and making you feel the passage of time. Their methods have changed, their alliances too. But at their core, they're still the people you know, and you can still reach out to them. Then why can't the game support a story this good? I'll be honest, the second half of the game isn't as good as the first. The first half has problems, like, I think the game has you crawling through sewers for at least the first 7 or 8 hours. You get to the digital world and get to crawl through the digital sewers. Ooh! The problems begin with one that isn't unique to Time Stranger. Towards the end of the game, you've just leveled so far past needing to fight grunts that the random encounters become more of an annoyance than a fun part of the game. It's bound to happen, and I don't hold it against the game specifically. The repetition, though, I can, because how the back half of the game is structured is the same across every one of the endgame dungeons. You show up to a location, find out it sucks. Somebody dies, you rewind time, and then fix it. It happens in the Abyss, the Forest, the Colosseum, the town, the Underworld. You notice the pattern really quickly. It's buoyed a bit by the unique paper doll-style cutscenes in between at the theater. This space in between time that has the farm and, of all people, Mireille from Redigitized. See? This is why I played it instead of Next Order! Sorry about bailing before the ending, but you look good! You look 10 years younger! The repetition extends to the dungeons as well, as half of the endgame dungeons are just the dungeons you did in the first half of the game, but ruined. The Abyss gets a striking dyed red sea, but none of the other revisited areas get a change that interesting. I can forgive those dungeons, since, yeah, we are just going back to the same areas, but the dungeons after that are a step down from a step down. The Underworld dungeon's gimmick is that Gekomon, not to be confused with Gekomon, will teleport you to different parts of the dungeon. This is done by telling him cheesy anime one-liners that make him want to throw up, which teleports you. It won't tell you which line is the one that advances you, though, so without trial and error, you're getting sent back to the start of the dungeon over and over. The repeat run-through afterwards marks which option is the right one, but man, I did not like this dungeon. The Fire and Ice dungeon with Dianamon and Apollomon threatens to be interesting with the twin dungeon design, advancing through one to get through the other, but the design of both is just dull, with elevators taking up a lot of the time and no memorable set pieces between them. The Light dungeon I thought was going to be pretty cool, with you teaming up with trapped titans in jail for a jailbreak, and Clavis Angemon being powered up by the temple's protection to turn him into a horror game boss. I wanted it to be like a survival horror dungeon, trying to avoid Angemon and flipping the switches you need, but it was a lot less interesting in execution. There's also a dungeon in the real world where the gimmick is find the code to open the door on a computer. Oh wait, no, it's on a whiteboard. Oh no, wait, it's on a piece of paper. The fun's starting soon, don't worry, it's time to fight a power loader. Wait, you can just call it that? With battles losing interest and bosses getting more annoying with status conditions and debuffs, it made the endgame more and more of a struggle to get through. It's also around this point that Inori and Aegiomon were kinda getting on my nerves. They're fine characters, they've just run out of stuff to say. Aegiomon only talks about protecting Inori, and Inori has a moment where she completely bold-faced says, "Conflict is bad, and I don't like it!" Luckily, they dip out of the story for a while to give us some time apart, but they rejoin for the game's climax, where a lot of stuff goes down. Throughout the game, you occasionally mention your dead adoptive father, Dr. Yuki, who was killed in a time anomaly. It's never treated as a goal to get him back, and it's never given much importance. You mention it to one of the side characters, though, and...
What are you talking about? If that's some sort of joke, it went over my head. Dr. Yuki is an anime character.
Get ready for a fucking info dump, baby. There are 3 computers who make up the digital world. Yggdrasil, who's the host computer for the main digital world, Homeros, who's the host computer for Iliad, the setting of the game, and Kunlun, who hosts Shambhala. You don't need to know about Shambhala until the next story game, which is going to take place in Shambhala. All 3 of them report to Homeostasis, capital G God in the Digimon world, a being who was previously attacked by the hero Chronomon. Chronomon is actually no hero. The former Keeper of Time, driven mad by his position, who lashed out in a way to try to escape. His grudge after being defeated manifested into the egg Aegiomon hatched from, and influenced the Titans to start their rampage. Aegiomon was created to cause the end of the world and fulfill Chronomon's wish, but every time he grew too attached to Inori. When the Shinjuku Inferno happens and Inori is killed, Aegiomon travels to a new timeline to try to fix it. This leaves behind a shadow version of himself that haunts the next timeline. You meet the shadows a few times across the game, and they never come off as fully benevolent or malevolent. They're wild cards, you can never pin down what they're going to do. Homeostasis took one of those shadows and made us out of it. That's right, you thought the Final Fantasy X comparisons ended with the turn order? Nope, you're a dream warrior. Modeled off an anime that Inori and her little brother used to watch. Adamas, your father, your handler, all of these are fake. Made up, set dressing to give your mission purpose. I'm mixed on the twist, because I really don't care about the divine side of Digimon with Yggdrasil and all his friends. I have to say though, the twist is really well crafted. The lack of explanation from Adamas at the beginning of the game gets reframed now as not being needed. You were born an Adamas agent. There's no backstory to explain. Your handler seeming to just repeat the same information over and over again, which gets really annoying, is actually just homeostasis trying to push you in a different direction. It's still really annoying, like the worst character in the game is the handler, but at least it has a purpose. I struggled to wrap my head around it at first, but once I took some time to understand, I really liked how the twist turned out, and I was ready to tackle the final dungeon. I'm gonna be a millionaire! So close, but the final dungeon sucks. The game's not content with letting you fight the resurrected Chronomon, so you gotta gather up the Olympus 12 again, and fight your way through the Akashic Record recreations of the 7 Great Demon Lords. I really don't like how they're used in this game, cause instead of being actual characters, they're 7 big roadblocks with no weight to them. These guys are the top of the evil Digimon world, and they're thrown out like they're nothing. Lucimon's Super Death final form is a roadblock on a bridge. Why are you half-assing it? The game's almost over, what are you saving that ass for? Maybe I was hoping for them to get focus, the way that Cyber Sleuth was the Royal Knight game, and this is the Olympus 12 game. The next story game could be the 7 Demon Lord game. But they're wasted here. Look at this little fucking jobber! He can't even be the boss when there's 2 of him! He has to play backup to a guy named Creepymon! And while I'm at it, where is his jerk-off arm? The story also starts getting wrapped up off-screen. The guy who built the super weapon to kill all the Digimon? Oh, a Digimon saved him, so he's good now. Inori's dad, who betrayed her to get revenge on the Digimon? Oh, he's fine now after launching a genocide weapon. Every single Titan, oh, it was actually Chronomon making them that way. Is anybody actually evil in this game? To get Bacchusmon to mount up, you have to collect 3 fruits in this silly little side quest during the end of the world, because he doesn't feel like breaking down a door. This is why Sirenmon died, you asshat! There is one Demon Lord, though, who gets treated like royalty. You enter the door to the final boss, and end up back in the village. And then back at home. In the Colosseum, and then the main street. You're stuck in a loop of these areas because Belphemon trapped you in a dream. You can only escape by destroying the sleep modes and triggering rage mode. This is it! This is how the Demon Lord should feel! Belphemon got treated so much better than, say, Lilithmon, who just sicked some dogs on you. Once you beat him, you get to Chronomon, and oh, this is where they were saving the ass for. Oh, this fight sucks. It's a scripted fight mostly, with it only becoming winnable after every single Olympus 12 member gets taken out and you absorb their power.
Take heed, partners! We shall fight until the bitter end, and never— The party doesn't start until I get here. Stand back, guys,
You know, we could have stayed as Grace Novamon and stood a chance, but now— This takes about 30 minutes, and the whole time you just spam your good move to hopefully soften him up for later. With Marine Angemon running back up for Rust Tyrannomon and Bancho Leomon, I wasn't gonna lose, so the fight just got extremely boring fast. At the end, though, Chronomon launches his final attack, reverting all your Digimon back to their in-training form. Aegiomon, though, launches a counterattack, and every turn digivolves your party up a level. You get a retrospective on your entire journey and watch your Digimon grow up again. using the moves you used all game. This is the best idea for a climax they could have had. Chronomon goes down, everything is set back to normal, and that's the end of Digimon Time Stranger. And I got to have my wholly original team of a Leomon, a Tyrannomon, and an Fuck! What a breath of fresh air. After suffering through Cyber Sleuth, I was really worried to try Time Stranger, but I couldn't have asked for more. Every issue I had with that game was addressed, or ignored with enough charisma that I could ignore it well enough. Battles are fun, raising Digimon is satisfying. I like the story, the environment, the characters, the music. I had my gripes at the end, but I couldn't call it any less than a great RPG. Basic in some areas, complex in others. I think you should try it. On sale. And now it's time for the Digimon rap. That's right, if Pokemon...